All right, it's the B.Block Podcast. Brandon Scott here, your host. I appreciate you for being here with me. Make sure you are subscribed to the B.Block Podcast wherever it is that you get them. Check us out also on YouTube. We are a Foolish Club Media production, so shout out to Foolish Club Media. Let's get right to it, man, because this has been a busy last few days as NBA free agency begins, as it gets underway, and the Rockets have been busy. They have been super active. Like the last time we talked, they had done the Fred VanVleet deal. I don't even think they had done. Yeah, they had done the Fred VanVleet agreement, but they had not even done the Jabari Smith Jr. deal. So I haven't had a chance to react on the podcast to any of that. You know, Jabari Smith Jr. getting 5 years, $122 million worth of an extension. It was time for him, right? He was the guy that was next in line, of course. Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green had gotten their extensions the previous offseason. He was drafted the next year. He was going to be the guy that was going to be extension eligible. Him and Tari Eason, by the way. And so we'll see if we get some news on that as well. But Jabari Smith Jr.'s 5-year, $122 million deal. They got the 4-year, $53 million deal done with Dorian Finney-Smith. Okay. And that one wasn't really much of a surprise because we were seeing the reports of them possibly being interested in Dorian Finney-Smith. They had a host of 3-and-D type of guys that they were looking at. Dorian Finney-Smith, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I think ended up with the Atlanta Hawks. And I think Luke Kennard was the other name that I saw my guy Kelly Eco at the Athletic report. So the Dorian Finney-Smith deal shouldn't have been much of a surprise. Now, I was a little bit surprised because I would have thought maybe he was looking to go somewhere where he could start. But I mean, that's me kind of imposing my own sensibilities and thoughts on what I felt like Dorian Finney-Smith should have been looking for, which really just turned out to be a $50 million deal he could find somewhere. And it's not like he's was going to be a for sure starter wherever he ended up. So the Dorian Finney-Smith thing happens. And then the surprise of the day, as we're taking in all of this news on Monday, getting all of these free agency news and headlines in there, was the Clint Capela reunion. And look, I don't know a Rockets fan or anybody that is adjacent to what the Rockets have had going on over the last decade plus that is not a Clint Capela fan, that it does not love Clint Capela, didn't have a little bit of reluctance when the Rockets traded him 5 years ago, which was all about when the Rockets traded Clint Capela in 2020 was all about spacing and figuring out a way for them to maximize the Russell Westbrook experiment. And it just came down to the fact that they could not have two guys on the floor at the same time that couldn't shoot. And that's what it was. And they'd already just traded for Russell Westbrook. And he, by the way, was actually brilliant that year. People forget about it, how good Russell Westbrook actually was for the Rockets in his one season with them. But it did necessitate them trading Clint Capela. That was a clear downside of it, if there really was one, other than the fact that they didn't, really win anything. It went to the playoffs, but didn't win anything, and it was only a 1-year experiment. But it cost you Clint Capela. And so he's back. And so now, if we're keeping count, that's Fred VanVleet brought back on a new deal. Team option decline, brought back on a new deal. Jabari Smith Jr. in line for an extension, gets a 5-year extension. Real quick on that. A lot of people were trying to figure out, does this make sense? Has Jabari Smith Jr. done enough to earn this deal? Do you like this deal for Jabari Smith Jr.? I love the deal. Absolutely love the deal because of his utility and his value to the team. I just think in today's game, there cannot be enough said for a guy who is tall, can shoot, and plays defense. And really, really plays defense. And so you've got that in Jabari Smith, who can give you some versatility on the defensive side, on the defensive end of the floor, and is obviously one of your better shot makers on the team. And it's clearly a part of their core. Here's what I hope. I hope that this extension means that with Jabari Smith Jr., they are going to figure out a way to get him the ball more often, and not just get him the ball, but get him the ball in situations that most that maximize his skill set, right? Like we saw very few, but hints of it in the playoffs against the Warriors, where you're like, oh, so they can run curls for Jabari Smith, where he just has to take one dribble and pull up, or he can catch and shoot, and then you wouldn't see a whole lot of it after that. It would just kind of be real sporadic, and I would like for it to be, now that he's got his 5-year, $122 million extension, and congratulations to him. I don't know if it's per se well earned as much as it is, I think, well deserved and warranted. Like, you need a player like Jabari Smith Jr. on your team, even if he hasn't exactly like just played like an all-star or anything close to that. I think this is warranted. I think he's a valuable member to the team, especially if they use him correctly. So that's my biggest, I would say, my biggest concern with giving Jabari Smith Jr. the money is not Jabari Smith Jr. himself. It is how they use him and making sure that they actually maximize him. Now, I think the Kevin Durant trade, and really when I say the Kevin Durant trade, I'm also talking about clearly Dylan Brooks being jettisoned out of here, opens up an opportunity for Jabari Smith Jr. to return to the starting lineup, return to his original role, and to thrive in it even more than he ever has. So I'm looking for a big year 4 jump and leap for Jabari Smith Jr. Like, I really am. I'm excited for it. I know when I talk about being excited for the players, for the young core, a lot of that is focused on either Amin Thompson or Alperen Sengun, or the idea that Reed Shepherd is going to take some tremendous leap in year 2 and be a legitimate contributor to the team. But Jabari Smith Jr. is somewhere nestled in between that, of taking that leap from, I think, really good role player to potentially elite role player and or X factor on a team. So I love that deal for Jabari Smith Jr. I know I hadn't had a chance to react to that, or hadn't reacted to that on the podcast. I've done so on radio, if y'all have seen or heard us on Sports Radio 610, but I wanted to get that done. I just kind of, off the top. But the thing that I really want to do here on this show, and this is going to be a bit of an abbreviated show because scheduling, got places to be, we got to get right to it. But I want to hit on this. Is this the best Rockets offseason ever? And I love that I get to do it as a topic on the podcast, because I already deposited this on the radio on Friday. Okay, we're recording this. This is Tuesday morning, July 1st. They've agreed to sign Dorian Finney-Smith, bringing Clint Capela back. Jabari Smith Jr.'s got his extension. We mentioned Fred VanVleet on the last podcast. Of course, we all know that the marquee move for the Rockets this offseason is trading for Kevin Durant. And on Friday, when I deposited this idea, all we really had at that point was a Kevin Durant trade, and I believe at that point a Fred VanVleet extension. And my big thing on In the Loop, so I'm doing, by the way, I should mention this, I'm doing In the Loop on Fridays now. If y'all are Sports Radio 610 followers, if y'all check me out on the radio on a weekly basis, I had been doing In the Loop on Tuesdays from 11 to noon, and The Drive at 4:40. With a scheduling change on my end, I'm going to continue to do The Drive on 4:40 with Clint Sterner and Ron the Show Hughley, but we're moving my hit with In the Loop from Tuesday to Friday, and we just started that last week. Don't think we're going to do it again this week because of the holiday, but in a couple of weeks we'll bring that back up, and Friday is the day to catch me on In the Loop if you enjoy that entire hour, right? It's the longest that I'm in, that I'm for sure in every week, and that's the 1 hour I do it In the Loop. And we're going to do that on Fridays now. So our first Friday was this past one, and my big takeaway, or my big thought on the show, was that this is already the best Rockets offseason that I at least can remember. And when I say I can remember, I'm just speaking from my own 36-year-old personal experience, 36 years old, that puts me around, you know, 25 plus, 25 close to 30 years of following the Rockets. So just as long as I've been able to remember Rockets off seasons, and the only one that is even close to it, well, I'll say this. I'm not going to even say this is the only one close to it, because the best Rockets off season ever is, and especially if we're just talking about my time frame, would of course be 2012 when they traded for James Harden, who is the second greatest Rocket ever. Okay, after Hakeem Olajuwon. So that seems like it's clearly the one. But another offseason that I see a lot of people compare this to, and this is folks that don't love the Kevin Durant trade, saying that it feels a lot like Barkley when the Rockets traded for Barkley um, and gave up Sam Cassell, Robert Ory, Chucky Brown, and Mark Bryant. Shout out to Sean Pendergast for reminding me that it was Mark Bryant. But I hate that comparison, because Kevin Durant at 36 years old, almost 37 years old, is better than Charles Barkley was at 32 or 33 years old, or whatever he was when they when they traded for him, and they gave up less. Like the Rockets gave up 4 players to get Charles Barkley. They gave up 2 and a bunch of draft picks that haven't done anything yet to get Kevin Durant, a better player. So they gave up less to get a better player. I think this is a much better deal than that one was. And I don't even love the comparison, just because of the quality of player that you get, the difference in the quality of player. But I I was thinking about it. Best offseason ever. If you take in what they've brought in, what they've kept, what they still have, and how they project into the upcoming season, I don't know how, if not ever, okay, maybe some of you old school cats, if you're listening, can take me back to a place where there was a Rockets offseason that was better than this. I mean, if you want to just go draft an Hakeem Olajuwon, then that one would be the best Rockets offseason ever. But short of that, and since then, I don't feel like the Rockets have had a better offseason, certainly not in my lifetime, and potentially ever. Don't think that it has happened. Let's start this thing with Kevin Durant. You're talking about an 11-time All NBA guy who is not still just living off of his name, but is still performing at a level that is similar to what you've seen at his best. Like, he is not at his best anymore, but the skills that made him great, he still possesses. And they're also ones that I've talked about on this podcast quite a bit. They are ones that translate well with age. It's just a matter of really keeping them upright. But you add Kevin Durant, and if I'm not mistaken, 11-time All NBA guy. And I'm surprised that it's not more. I could even be wrong on that. Like, let's see if I can find it. He's got 6 first teams and 5 second teams. I don't have him being a third team All NBA guy, but I don't know, man. The idea that he was in the league for a few years before he made an All NBA team surprises me a little bit. But that's what I'm seeing here. 11-time All NBA guy, and much better than that. 4-time scoring champion. Now, he hasn't won the scoring title in over a decade, but still has those same skill sets that brought him to that place, that led him to actually winning a scoring title. And so all of that is to say, you're getting Kevin Durant. You're adding Kevin Durant to a team that struggled to shoot last year. And as I've mentioned again before, he was the best jump shooter by percentage in all of basketball. Best from mid-range, best on pull-ups, um, best jump shooter, overall jump shooter that you had last year. So there's Kevin Durant. I feel like adding Kevin Durant to a team that was the number 2 seed the previous year, and all they couldn't really do was shoot the ball, is like, I don't know. It goes without saying how major that is. Okay. Then we get to the Jabari Smith Jr. deal, which I think just simply like he was going to be on the team, but I think there was a lot of, thought of, hey, could he be traded? Or the Rockets done? What's the next thing that they're going to do? I think that this deal, the fact that over the course of the trade discussions, we heard a lot of the Rockets not wanting to get rid of Jabari Smith Jr., not wanting to include him in trade talks. Now, as we discussed, this was just a smart thing for the Rockets to understand what leverage was and what leverage looked like, and that they could get Kevin Durant without giving up Jabari Smith Jr. I think that was just a smart thing to do. But this shows you that, or at least to me, that wasn't just smart negotiation on the Rockets' part. It was also intentional in the sense of wanting Jabari Smith Jr. to be a part of what they got going on. And as I talked about earlier, I think that he's going to do a lot for their starting lineup as their four, but also I think now their small ball lineups are going to be even more impressive and dynamic, with Jabari Smith Jr. potentially playing some, stretch five. But now also, and this is what brings us to Dorian Finney-Smith and his 4-year, $53 million agreement with the Rockets. Man, can you imagine what these small ball lineups are going to look like? And of course, we mentioned earlier, Clint Capela is coming back. The Capela thing confused me a little bit because I didn't really see where exactly there were going to be minutes for him. But when I sat and thought about it for a little while, all it is that they're not going to bring back Jock Landale, and Clint Capela is effectively going to be the new Jock Landale, which I have no problem with at all. No problem with whatsoever. Honestly, if he was going to be their backup center, period. If they had decided not to bring back Steven Adams, a move that I did not mention earlier, they had decided not to bring back Steven Adams, I would have been fine with Clint Capela as the backup center. So as a third string center, I'm certainly okay with it. Given that the previous guy was Jock Landale, you're just swapping out one for the other. Clint Capela, fan favorite, still big, still can rebound, still can catch lobs. Now I don't know exactly who's going to be throwing them these lobs per se, but we'll find that out. We'll figure that out. I just feel like between their small ball lineups, and their double big lineups, they're going to be dynamic no matter who it is that they put out there on the floor. So when you got Jabari Smith Jr. out there as your stretch five, you can go out there with a lineup, and let's say you take Fred out for a little bit. You sub out Fred Van Vliet and Alperen Sengun, and throw out a lineup out there like, let's call it Amin Thompson, Kevin Durant, Tari Eason, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Jabari Smith Jr. Man, now we're talking about a lineup with that's three high-level defenders off the top of my head I'm thinking of, between Amin Thompson, All-NBA defensive guy, Tari Eason, who is about as good of a defender as you can ask for to come off of your bench, and Dorian Finney-Smith, and then plus Jabari, his versatility, um, and Kevin Durant just still being old but tall. Like, to me, that's a dynamic defensive lineup, and certainly one that shoots a lot better than anything that they were putting out there before, with the addition of both Kevin Durant and Dorian Finney-Smith. So, and if let's see, Dorian Finney-Smith shot a career high 41% from three last year. So, what do we say that the Rockets needed? They needed shooting shooting above all else. They have now added, like, essentially, like, if you want to just kind of boil it down, you're subtracting Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks and adding Kevin Durant and Dorian Finney-Smith. You could say the Dorian Finney-Smith Dylan Brooks thing is either a wash or that you would prefer Dylan Brooks over Dorian Finney-Smith, which I would be just fine with. But Dorian Finney-Smith does still shoot 41% from three, does still play defense at an elite clip, and the Kevin Durant versus Jalen Green thing, we're just not going to relitigate. So I would say that they got a lot better. They got a lot better in that regard. Okay. So I'm just looking at the lineup flexibility, the different styles of play that they can throw out there. You know, just the doubling down on the idea of a double big lineup, right? We're going to see a lot more of it this year than we did the previous year, because they didn't even really discover how good it was until midway through the year, and they were just trying some things. Um, and then doubling down on that now with Clint Capela and the fact that you could throw him out there as well. Uh, and he gives you a little bit of insurance on the Steven Adams thing. You know, like you don't have to run Steven Adams into the ground, which I think is going to be really important as somebody that's, you know, overcome injury over the last couple of years. Is getting a little bit older. Capela is too, by the way. And that's another thing. I just thought about this. Capela, I didn't realize that Dorian Finney-Smith was 32. I mean, I know he's been in the league for a long time. I've been following for a long time. I just time got away from me, and I didn't realize he was 32. They've added 36, finna be 37-year-old Kevin Durant. They've added 32-year-old Dorian Finney-Smith and 31-year-old Clint Capela. I think the team is a little bit older now. You know, and you've got to love this combination. The team got older in places that I feel like it needed to, and kept its youth in places where I also felt like it needed to. You know, you got your experience and your innocence, but the innocence part is over with now because you done been to the playoffs. You done been paid in the case of Jabari Smith Jr. With Amin Thompson, in his case, he's been anointed as an All NBA defensive guy and a potentially All NBA guy further down the line. Like playtime is over with, and the Rockets actually treated this offseason like that. You know, like leveling up. So I think this is just an incredible development for the Rockets that they would be in this position to where they could add so much talent and up the ante in the way that they have. I thought my guy Chancellor Johnson, formerly of KPRC, now doing his own thing, but a friend of the show, I thought he had a great point on Twitter where he said, for as patient as Rockets general manager Rafael Stone has been throughout this rebuild, the moment he had an opportunity to launch this team into contention, he didn't waste any time. And it brings me back to the whole best offseason ever point. You know, Kevin Durant bringing back, like securing Fred VanVleet, because that was a question, right? Like Fred VanVleet had a team option. So they could have decided to let him walk, you know, and none of us thought that was going to happen, but they could have done that. They bring back Fred VanVleet on a deal that apparently everybody likes. You know, the parties like VanVleet and the Rockets. They bring back Steven Adams, who was key in the run that they made this past year. Both guys, they don't get to a 7-game series last year or this past year without Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams, just point blank period. So you bring those guys back. You trade for Kevin Durant. And then as a throw-in, basically, you've got Dorian Finney-Smith and Clint Capela. There's a time, and I want this. I feel like this is important at least. There was a time not that long ago. I would even say call it a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, where for the Rockets, the best they could have done in an offseason would have been signing a Dorian Finney-Smith. Like that would have been like the thing. Brought in Dorian Finney-Smith, but there wasn't going to be a lot of big moves beyond that, right? Like you remember several years back, what was the big move? 5 years ago, bringing in Christian Wood, their marquee signing. What was the big move 15 plus years ago now? Bringing in Trevor Ariza, bringing in Ron Artest. Like there are not, to me, there are just not a lot of Rockets off seasons that even compare to this one. And the only ones from my memory that compare to it are trading for Charles Barkley, which, trading for Charles Barkley in 1996, it had the, you know, NBA world talking about it. And you did pair him or have him join a couple other Hall of Famers in Clyde Drexler, Hakeem Olajuwon. They had just come off of winning the championship a couple of years before that. But that to me wasn't it. That to me doesn't quite compare to this, even if at the time it felt like maybe it did. Doesn't quite compare to this. Or it compares to it, but doesn't quite match this. You've got drafting Steve Francis in 2000. You've got drafting Yao Ming in 2002. I think there's some cases that you can make for those in terms of excitement, but doesn't quite get there for me. Maybe the Yao one does. Maybe the Yao Ming one does. I'll entertain and listen to that, because I think that did a lot for not just the team competitively, but from a business standpoint. I think that put the Rockets, and really probably did a lot for the NBA in general, but put the Rockets in a different space, with the Chinese market and all of that. Now, almost 20 years later, I think Daryl Morey put a lot of that in jeopardy, if not ruined it. But that's actually a whole nother podcast, entirely different podcast. So there's that. You got drafting Steve Francis in the I said in 2000, the 2000. You got drafting Yao Ming in 2002, and then of course the big one, I think, is the trade for James Harden in 2012. But I point this out. I don't feel like anyone was under the impression that James Harden was going to be anything close to what he was when they traded for him. And certainly in retrospect, that's a big offseason. But I remember at the time thinking that James Harden, and like trying to compare James Harden and Jeremy Lin to like how close can they be to a Cuttino Mobley, Steve Francis type of combination. Now that sounds ridiculous today, and a little bit probably ridiculous even at the time. But I was trying to just like envision, what is this supposed to be exactly? Then it turns out that James Harden was going to be an all-time great player. Didn't know that necessarily at the time, especially off the finals that he was coming off of. But now with Kevin Durant, the only concern with him is because of his age, how long is he going to be healthy enough to play at the level that he's playing at? I think that's a legitimate concern. It's just one that a risk that I'm willing to take, as I've discussed. But you're bringing in the best jump shooter in the game, one of the better 3-and-D wings / 4. Dorian Finney-Smith can basically play 3 positions. So you're bringing that in, 41% from the field, and one of the better perimeter defenders that you'll find, and probably coming off of your bench. And you lock up your number 3 overall pick, who still has untapped potential. I like it. Like, I think that there lies the difference between where in 2025, the difference between where Jalen Green was at and where Jabari Smith Jr. was at with the team, whereas both had untapped potential, or unrealized potential, certainly. But with Jalen Green, it seemed like he had run out of time. Whereas with Jabari Smith Jr., it feels like they're just getting started, especially after trading for Kevin Durant and leveling up, trading for Kevin Durant, signing Dorian Finney-Smith. The environment and the circumstance that Jabari Smith Jr. is going to play his fourth season in is going to be much better, and his role is just much different from what Jalen Green's is, and so he makes sense for this team and for that deal. Yeah, I'm willing to deem this as the best Rockets offseason ever. What say you? What say you, the audience? I'm very curious on what y'all are thinking and how y'all are feeling about this. I'm feeling really good about where the Rockets are right now, what the possibilities are for the team. I've not gotten bold enough to like pick them to go to the Western Conference Finals or pick them to go to the finals or any of that. But it's looking up. It's looking up, man. It's looking up, no doubt about it. That's all I got for this episode. I just really wanted to deposit the idea on the podcast since I'd done it on the radio already. Best Rockets off season ever? I say so. What say you? Let me know in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on social media. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you rate. Make sure you review. And make sure you tell a friend about the podcast. Until next time, y'all be good.